He's really very good. I don't need to.
I try to leave. How do you?
I just come out here to lawn chair, sit on our property and watch it.
So you want for our weekly release?
No, I'm not.
So you give me your email address. That's easy enough to hook you in. You'll get everything we put out.
Yeah. But every Thursday, we put out what our step next week. So then you know when the ground is being.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I'm not one of those adults. I told my wife it's a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's really, so,
Good to meet people who invest so much in it. I'll tell you what, my wife and I love being here. Where's our restaurant?
Go right on your back.
Okay, sounds good.
Anything more today?
What this stuff was
No, I'm not sure. I checked I grabbed those big platforms that
I'll just talk to Nolan. Nolan's going to run the camera.
Okay, great. Over to the restroom. Yeah. All right, thanks, Mike.
Okay, so that would look at more needs for that. Thank you.
So, today's invitation is going to be Mike. Good job, Mike. Stick up. You got to get right in there.
Bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for this food. Please bless it with the nourishment of our bodies. Thank you for these hands that you prepared it. Be with us in everything we do on this beautiful sunshine day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so let's see. We have flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So who's got the song?
I guess I do.
Okay.
I don't know. Because the sun's out, let's do You Are My Sunshine.
Perfect, we're ready.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
That's good enough. You know, Pete, we could have done a lot better if you would have shown up. All right, go ahead and sit down. So do we have any visiting Rotarians here? Okay, we don't have any visiting Rotarians. Do we have any guests of Rotarians? Looks like we got quite a few. Keith?
I brought my two beautiful children. Well, three, because this one comes here from everywhere so far. Piper and Reagan.
Introducing Annette Mead, who's working at Main State Realty. Actually, he's visiting her club for the first time.
I brought my beautiful child. This is KJ. He's coming.
Right here, you want to introduce? Oh, not, he's the speaker.
I got it. So this is Mike Wellick. He's a public affairs officer at NAS Whidbey Island and was instrumental in getting our program here today. So welcome, Mike.
Okay, so we have time to do the club business, and we have an announcement from Tim. Tim, go ahead.
Starting to set up the mentoring program. I've got some handouts over here describing the program. Last year, it was a success. We learned a lot, and we're going to make some changes to try to make it more effective. But in talking to the high school staff, they were real happy with some of the changes that occurred, and some of them were very unexpected, but very, very beneficial. So it was a success, and we're running again, modifying it based on what we've learned, and pick up a handout if we're interested. You can learn more about what we're doing.
Okay, perfect. So I got a couple announcements. Actually, September 5th, this is a very important day. It's a double-decker day. Okay, September 5th, during the meeting, we're going to discuss all the community projects and we're going to vote on them. So we basically extended it for a month to get the paperwork in. Phil Mahaley got a project for the city of Clear Lake. They're going to try to build an old log cabin back, and so they're looking for funding. Daniel Russell, right, is working on some kind of swing that we can use handicap accessible down at the Riverfront Park. She's gonna fill out some paperwork, we'll have it. So if there's any other ones running around, we need to get them into, I guess, me, and I'll get them to whoever's supposed to have them, and between Ruth and the rest of that team, they'll make sure I get things done properly. The other thing that's happening that day is the salmon barbecue. That group that puts that on, Chuck's in charge of. Are you still in charge of that group, Chuck?
Josh Weekwood is chairman.
Josh Reed was in charge, so that means that Chuck is just in charge of making sure that all the extracurricular activities are done properly.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I know that that will come off well, and that is for the whole family. So Piper, you and Reagan are coming to salmon dinner, right? 10-4. Okay, perfect. All right. On the 12th, we're going to have our golf tournament out at the Overlook Golf Course, and that's a great time, and you don't have to be a golfer to go out and have fun. So those are two things you need to get on your agenda for September so that we can get this stuff done. One more thing, and there's 24, because Rick Tesrick just turned his in, dues that are still due for this year. And just get them to Steve, or get them to anybody, and we'll get them to Steve. So just remember, we got to get these paid for so we can have plenty of money to do the extracurricular. And with that, Marty, are you in charge of anniversaries?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to do the anniversaries right now.
Okay, so we are going to start, with this one for the, he's coming to save him because I was going to give her the mic, but I'll let you do it.
This is my wife, Sherry. We've been married 51 years at the end of this month. Wow. We, unlike Mike, we have 4 kids in 7 years, as he had 5 kids in 5 years. So
Still
we
pretty
have
good.
8 grandchildren, and we're taking care of 2 93-year-olds, which are littler than a 2-year-old. My wife, Sherry.
Hi, Sarah.
This is my husband, Michael. We have been married for 8 years on Tuesday, and together for 12. We have 2 boys. Nash will be a first grader at Big Lake this year, and Hayes will be in kindergarten next year at Big Lake.
So this is my wife Sylvia, and we have been married 39 years on Saturday. We have 1 daughter. She lives in Yakima right now and hates Yakima, but
Say something fun. I don't know, it's been an adventure and it's been great. How's that? There was lots of anniversaries this month, but not very many showed up. So I got one in case I missed somebody, or if you want to make somebody really happy, it doesn't have to be a spouse, it could be anonymous. You can purchase this lovely little flower. Ooh, there's one right there.
It might take more than that, Mark. I've been home and having my wife have to take care of me when I broke a knee or something, and I don't think that flower is enough to put up with what she's having to deal with. Anyhow, so any other announcements? Okay. I think it's up to you, Keith,
looking at this table, legislative, not political. Which legislative district are you in right now? It's on there, right? According to this correct. Mike, don't try to sink it with a last chance wrong answer, but still may one day. So, how many legislative districts are in the state? Going once, going twice. Okay, the answer is 43, and you're close, but that's going to be $2. There's 49 legislative districts in Washington State. So, for you on the same topic, how many legislators represent each legislative district? It's got to be 10. How many legislators represent each? So it's simple. You're in 39. How many legislators represent? So this is what I found out. So 2 is wrong, pay $2. So 3. You have a senator and 2 members of the House represent each legislative district. 3 is the answer. Okay, last legislative question, and this one I'll say lead into. When a bill gets passed, what's a typical number of committees it has to go through before it reaches the governor's desk? You pay $1, that's correct. 6 is that answer. They typically go through a policy committee, a fiscal committee, and a rules committee. Good job. And I'm going to switch to the Navy because that's our topic today. We often saw the P3s flying around here from Libby. They've gone to the PD. But what preceded, which aircraft preceded the P8 and the P3? Any ideas? Yeah. P2 is correct. You know the name. Looking for the name. No, it's P2 Neptune. But I'll give you full credit. You've got half if you can answer the name of the P8 that's out there now. Anybody know the name? Poseidon is correct. So $1 each for this table. Very nice job. So the EA-18 is in the news, the Growler. So the Attorney General assumed the Navy over that, and maybe there's a little bit more about that from our guest today. What aircraft preceded the Growler? Well done, the Growler, the EA-6B. So $1 to you, and I am all done, sir.
Hey, how about Happy Bugs?
Happy Bugs. Who's happy? I see one hand.
All these should be really happy.
I have a happy wedding. As of August 4th, Jenny and I joined in marriage. So I'm married now, husband and wife, and really glad we were joined by our family and nephews and nieces. We were in Oregon, took a week family vacation, so really happy about that. Congratulations.
I'm happy Ruth called me yesterday on my phone. When she called me, it said Mark Venn. So I'm happy she called me from the school district. I still have Mark's old work number. How many years has that been? 6 years, yeah, thank you.
Ruth, come on.
I'm glad somebody called. I'm happy to be here last Tuesday. I had a total hip replacement on my right hip, and it went very successfully, and I'm just happy to be here today after that surgery.
I don't know if you've asked for birthdays or anniversaries, but I always say that I don't have a wife, but I have an anniversary.
I guess my last month for the concert series. It was a great year for it. Lots of fun, lots of pictures, lots of wonderful help from fellow Rotarians with raffles and beer garden and whatnot. So I just want to say thank you to all the sponsors and everybody that came out and helped. Through the raffle, we did end up making a total of $2,051 for Helping Hands School Bands.
I hope you have a few minutes. So I'm really happy I have a car because Charlie and I were down watching the Edgar Olympic game on Saturday.
I was there too. I didn't see you there.
We were there, and at some point, our only car key fell out of his pocket. I'm not blaming him. And we went to check out of our hotel Sunday morning, and we had no keys. And the car was parked in a parking garage that not every tow truck needed to. So we spent all day Sunday trying to get that vehicle towed to a dealership because you have to take these cars to dealerships to get keys made when you don't have keys. It's the same process. Anyway, all day Sunday, half the day Monday, and $650 later, I have my car back.
I know a guy here who could have been in your car and had it running in 15 minutes. So, for $25. So, anyhow, next time that happens, call me. I'll send the guy. If he's not in jail, he's really. So, I have 20 happy bucks. Last weekend, my son Adam got married. It was a great wedding. Everything happened. But I'm telling you, there are certain people that God intervenes that they get married, and Adam's one of them. He is very difficult to live with as a father. So I can just imagine what it's like to be his wife. But they get along great, and it's worked out perfect. But it's like this huge weight just got off me that I could actually say that Adam's got married. So that's, for me, it was a great day, and but I learned something. I don't care who you are, you never have an open bar at a wedding and be responsible for the check at the end of the day. So anyhow, it was great, and with that, I think we're done. Keith, come up here, and you're going to introduce the guests today, and get early leavers. In a minute, you can go.
And early leavers, make sure you pay at the door on your way out. So it's my honor to introduce our speaker today, Captain Matt Harney, call sign Flounder, so I assume there's like an animal house. He'll tell that story if he wants to. So Captain Arney went to a dubious institution, the United States Naval Academy, class of 1993, so I know he was a young man. That was 11 years after I left there. He's the commanding officer of the Naval Station, Whidbey Island, for the past year. Came and visited the legislature. It was great to have you down there at a time when Olympia was treating you a little more nicely than it has been lately. Captain Arney was an F-14 Rio. If you guys ever saw Top Gun, you got to see his aircraft, the old Tomcat, and he's flown in F-18s as well and participated in combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Shore assignments include some very interesting locations. Naval Attaché to the Kingdom of Sweden is notable. That's kind of a nice deal, probably better than Abu Dhabi was, where he did a similar job. So a captain has a Master's of Arts in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Navy War College and an MBA from Darden School of Business in Virginia, as well as this prestigious Naval Academy. Right. Welcome to Matt Flounder, Captain Arney. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me out here today. I really enjoyed getting out to different communities and talking about all the great stuff that's going on at Whidbey Island. I'll I'll try to keep my talk to about 20 minutes. We'll go through a bunch of different topics. And then the best part is getting the questions from the crowd. So Reagan and Piper, pipe in anytime if you got a question that you want to ask, and anybody else as well. So this is Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. That's all field there with the Seaplane Base beyond OF Coopville as you look down to the south. And we're working to restore readiness, increase capacity, and increase lethality and build capacity. That's our mission out there. We are the only naval air station in the Pacific Northwest amongst the 4 naval bases, Naval Station Everett right down the road, Naval Base Kitsap, which includes Bangor, Bremerton, and Keyport, and then Navmag, Indian Island. We have the Fleet Electronic Attack and the Maritime Patrol and Reconnaissance wings, and I'll talk briefly about those. And then I'm the commander of the Northwest Training Range Complex, which I'll show you a couple slides about, because that's been in the news as well, so that might be of some interest. And then as the installation, we support the mission of all these tenants, supporting the fleet fighter and family out there. A lot of family services for all kinds of needs across the spectrum. I won't get into a lot of details on those, but always welcome to answer questions about that. I think it's important before we go into the talk about why we're here, what we're doing nowadays. You can see the personalities up there. You can see pictures representing the different issues we face nowadays in the global and the great power competition. Resurgent or building up China, you can see one of the islands that they built. I think they built about 9 islands in the time it takes us to build a hangar, and they've militarized those islands in the South China Sea. Some concerns for us and our partners and allies out there. Obviously, Russia. In my time in Sweden, it was right after the Crimea, and a lot of interesting activities by Russia and Europe that I was working with the Swedes on. So it was very enlightening to see it from the Swedish perspective. And obviously, the counter-terror effort that we continue to do, which I've spent a lot of my career doing as well. So a lot of important efforts out there in the world, and but most importantly, throughout our history as a Navy, we are the naval force for this maritime nation. And it's important to remember, even though I ordered a book on Sunday, Pursuit of Happiness by Chris Gardner, which is a great book, because he actually came to the installation and spoke on Tuesday. I ordered it Sunday evening. It was on my doorstep at 11 on Monday, and I was able to read it by the time he spoke on Tuesday. And but despite that, still 90% of our commerce flows over the water on ships. So that's why we got to be out there making sure those lines of communication are open for our trade. You look through history on this graph here to the left, you can see the Reagan years. We were pursuing a 600-ship Navy. We had the blue line is the percentage deployed. We have about 17% of the ships deployed as we got to the end of the Cold War. Translates to about 102 ships deployed in one day. Nowadays, we're at 290 ships today, and we got about 36% of them deployed. Translates to about 104 ships. So we got about the same number of ships out there deployed. You see each of those ships is a little more capable than the ones that were back in the 80s. However, it still takes personnel, and it still puts a lot of miles on our equipment. So being good stewards of our assets is important, making sure that we take care of them, get them the preventative maintenance that they need. But it's challenging to do that when 36% of your force is deployed at any one time. And certainly, it's challenging on the families out there supporting the service members as to get them out there training for deployments and then being out there on deployment. You look at the world from the perspective of Whidbey Island and Sedro Woolley, which sits right there in the center of our universe. There, you see the Arctic. Obviously, you can have your own thoughts and opinions about what's going on with the Arctic and the importance of, again, maintaining freedom of navigation as we open possibly trade routes over the next few decades, and also protection of fisheries and mineral resources and all those kinds of things. It's a great opportunity to expand access to those. It's also an opportunity for great competition up in those regions. And here at Whidbey Island, we sit on pretty much the trade routes that come across from the Pacific. I mentioned the South China Sea. About 2/3 of the commerce in the world goes through the South China Sea. Very busy place that I've seen through and operated in the past. And we're also at the center point for a lot of logistics up to Thule, Denmark, or to Jacksonville, where the other half of the Maritime Patrol wing sits, and then out there to Guam and such. So pretty great location we sit in up here in the Northwest. Team Whitby is made up of a lot of entities. I've got the air station, which has all the police, security, air traffic control, public affairs, a lot of those elements that we run every day. But what sits on top of that is the Electronic Attack Wing Pacific, led by Captain Adam Carlstrom. I'll talk briefly about the Growler expansion here. And then on the Captain Kevin Long has the Maritime Patrol and Reconnaissance Wing 10, which has, like I said, half of the Navy's Maritime Patrol fleet. Navy Ocean Processing Facility. They've got a facility on the shores of Whidbey Island that houses all the cables that run out into the Pacific to do the underwater surveillance. And they also man, train, equip our CERTAS crews, which are crews that go out there on ships for 90 days at a time to do that underwater and surface surveillance as well. So robust effort by a group there. NIOC is the Information Operations Command. They take all that data that's coming in from those first three I mentioned to do all that processing and distribution of data. So a busy and growing entity in NIOC. Can't do anything without the logistics and the Fleet Logistics Center. There supplies us with our shipments every day. Naval Health Clinic Oak Harbor services about a 29,000 person population. They don't run 24/7. They don't have an emergency room. We rely on Whidbey Health in Island County or Island Hospital for those kinds of services. But they've got a robust clinic effort there to support us. Over there on the left, Fleet Readiness Center. Every time you pull a box or an engine or something like that out of the aircraft, it's got to go somewhere to get maintained, and that's what FRC does. So an important effort in that intermediate level maintenance. Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training Unit. Whenever a sailor comes in with a particular specialty, they're the ones who train them how to do that on their particular platform so that they go to the squadron and be successful. Navy Operational Support Center is our reserve component, so they maintain all our reservists who augment these activities. And then Fleet Reserve Logistics Squadron has three C-40 aircraft, passengers and cargo. It's a 737 cargo aircraft that we have, and that goes through our terminal services, which provides about 1,000 flights per year, 20,000 passengers, and lots of cargo to support the deployments and redeployments of a lot of these entities. Work a lot in the community, and unfortunately I should have put Sedro Woolley on here. We got Mount Vernon, which is a neighbor, but anyway, one of many community partners out there. Obviously focused on Island County, but we get out all around, and also as the commander of the Northwest Training Range Complex, I get down to Oregon, down to Salem, so I get to work with two legislatures, not just one, which is a lot of fun. And also tribal partners. A lot of tribal interactions throughout our properties in Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, so I can meet with tribal leaders to make sure that we are working together on solutions for concerns. The base itself at Whidbey Island, that's all field, named after a great hero of the Battle of Coral Sea who was lost in that while leading a carrier air group against the forces of Japan. Seaplane base, that's the original place where we were doing PPY Catalina seaplane operations, and a lot of history there, but we maintain 3 housing areas, exchange, commissary, and some other entities on the seaplane base. Might have heard about OLF Coopville. That's where we do our field carrier landing practice for the E-18G Growler. We also do helicopter search and rescue training there as well. And then down here, Lake Hancock, that's an old bombing range that we used to use with the A6 Intruder that we no longer use. But we do have expended munitions there, inert munitions, rocket fuels. So we do some munition mitigation programs down there periodically to try to clean that up. You can see the numbers there on the left, 10,500 personnel work on the base, including the ones who are currently deployed. So it's about 8,400 to 8,500 active duty military, civilians and contractors. You can see all the local veterans, family members, dependents. And then down here, we did a study in 2018 on the 2017 economic impact that we had in the region of influence, and assessed that it's over $1 billion of economic impact that Naval Air Station Whidbey Island has. When you look at the region as a whole, with all those bases that I talked about, it gets over $10 billion of economic impact in the Western Washington region. And then if you add Yakima, Fairchild, JBL, and all those, I don't have those numbers, but it's significantly higher. On the Maritime Patrol side, which you have pictured there on the upper left, is the P-8 Poseidon, whoever picked that one. That is also a 737 that was designed specifically for our use in the anti-submarine warfare role and anti-surface warfare role. It is replacing the P-3 Orion, which is a 4-engine turboprop aircraft that's been around since the early 60s. You can see the squadrons there. We have 6 active duty operational squadrons, and we have 1 reserve squadron, and then we have 1 electronic intelligence squadron, which flies the EP3 version, which is VQ1. On the upper right, there's the Triton MQ-4C Triton aircraft. It's an unmanned aircraft. The wingspan is longer than the wingspan of the P-8 is. It will not fly out of NAS Whidbey Island, but we're building a mission control station. So once the aircraft launches out of forward operating base like Guam, it will take off, get up to about 50,000 feet, and then handover to the mission will take place so that the mission is run, that 12 or 14-hour mission is run out of Whidbey Island, out of the squadron there. And then once that mission is complete, it'll be handed back to the forward operating base to do the recovery, where its maintenance will be done at that location, such as Guam. So these squadrons are transitioning on the left. We've got VP-46 in transition. VP-40 is the last active duty operational P-3 squadron deployed. They're returning in about a month, and then they'll go through their 6-month transition. So by March of 2020, we'll be complete with that. We still have VP-69 outstanding, which I expect to transition as well, and that will take place in a few years. As far as the Triton, that program is standing up. So we'll see the EP3 go away once that program is fully stood up, maybe in about 3 or 4 years. On the electronic attack wing, we had 82, we're about 92 operational growlers in the flight line now. You can see the squadrons there. VAQ-129 is the training squadron. So once you go through flight school and you get your wings, you've done day carrier qualifications, so you've actually gone out to an aircraft carrier and landed daytime. And then you come to the training squadron once you're selected for growlers. And then they teach you how to do that flying and how to tactically employ the growler at a basic level. As you work through your about 1-year syllabus, near the end of that syllabus, actually at the end of that syllabus, then you get to go out and take it out to the ship before you graduate from VAQ-129. So when you enter that phase, you do classroom stuff, you do simulators, then you go do field carrier landing practice, and then once you're assessed to be relatively competent, actually very competent enough to get out there, then you go out to the ship and you land into the ship. Also, if you've been away from the aircraft for a while, you'll go back through a refresher syllabus, including that carrier training. We have 7 carrier-based squadrons, 5 expeditionary. So this also, we are the only tactical electronic attack capability in the Department of Defense. The Air Force had the EF-111 back to the Cold War. They stopped that program. The Marines had the Prowler up until this last spring. They sunned out that capability, so the Growler is the only tactical electronic attack capability out there. And to go into combat without that capability is not going to be successful in today's world. And certainly, even throughout my time, flying over Iraq and Afghanistan, having that capability there, defeating IEDs and such as we've evolved has been crucial to the successes that we have had in that warfare. You can see that we've been doing construction there because we're blasting off 36 more Growlers to 118 distributed across the squadrons there. Search and rescue, we've got 3 helicopters to do search and rescue with an extremely professional crew who does that. And you can see the numbers of missions they've done. We're actually up to 28 missions this year because last night about 9 o'clock I got a call that there was 2 people on the east side of the Cascades who had some broken arms and stuff who needed to be rescued. And so we launched our helicopter to go do that last night. And they do that. Great effort to support the community. The local SAR assets don't have the equipment to be able to get up into those kinds of places. So it's great training for us, familiarization with the areas, because their core mission is to be there when a growler goes down, to be able to go recover that growler through. Our growlers train down from Central Oregon and Central Washington and out over the Olympic Peninsula and the Pacific. So these crews need to be able to go out into any of those locations to go recover that growler crew out there. Here's where all the deployed forces are today. The blue and white is the Maritime Patrol side, so they do Homeland Defense out there in Hawaii. Got a site in El Salvador that they go down to every now and then to do counter drug ops. And then they're also in Europe, Middle East, and Asia. The green is the surtax crews that I talked about that patrol the Pacific going underwater surveillance and surface surveillance. The red bordered star is the growler, and so we have 4 deployed forces in Japan, and we have expeditionary forces in the Middle East and Asia, and we have carrier-based forces as well on Abraham Lincoln, for example, in the Middle East. And then the red is the individual augmentees. So those are individuals who go out there, usually military working dogs, air traffic controllers, and medical personnel to go out and augment the mission overseas. So all that is, this reflects all the operations that we have done and are projected to do. This top line here is total operations. When you look at NAS Whidbey Island being all field and oil of Kuko. Down here on the bar graph is, the top of the bar is the total number of field carrier landing practice operations each year. And then the blue on the bottom of the bar represents those that are done at OLF Cookville each year. Back here in 1978, which is this first peak, that was 24,000 at OLF Cookville and about 150, just over 150,000 total operations done that year. In 1991, we had our peak number of tactical aircraft on the base. That was 216. That was the A6 and the Prowler, the Intruder and the Prowler. Since then, we shut down the Intruder, and then we transitioned to the Prowler. And with the Growler coming in, we were constrained to 6,120 operations per year at OLF Cookville. And now with this recent record of decision, where we're adding 36 Growlers, we're also pushing our FCLPs down to OLF Cookville to do 80% of them down that direction. What that does is a much better training environment, daytime and nighttime, and also it clears up a lot of the congestion around the airfield, because all this other stuff is all the other missions that go on, whether they're logistics or Growlers going out to do other training, or PAs going to do anti-submarine warfare training. All that stuff takes place, and it's challenging to get those out when we have FCLPs going on. So we're limited to 23,700 now at OLF Cookville, and then you can see we'll be ramping up operations to about 112,000 is our maximum that we would be permitted to do. All those operations generate noise, and so we track noise. I get noise complaints every day, and we certainly graph that. These lines are the noise modeling for the different contours around Oakfield and OLF Cookville, and then each one of these aircraft represents a complaint in 2018. Over here on the right, you can see the total number of complaints, and then the total number of callers for each month, each year. So we look at that on a monthly basis every month, and then like I said, I see the noise complaints every day to go through them, and we have a team to go see if there's something particular that went on that we need to go back to the crew and address, or see if we need to call back the person who filed the complaint to inform them about what was going on. A lot of seasonality, so sometimes we're using different runways than others. So like in the springtime, we'll start getting an increase in complaints in a certain area because we've oriented our operations due to the winds in different directions, so we call them to inform them what's going on. I talk population, and that gets a lot of talk around Oak Harbor in particular, Island County. So this is all the FRC and my staff and all those others that make up the kind of basis of the installation. The yellow is the Maritime Patrol, and the blue is the Growler. So every time we transition one of those squadrons from P3 to P8, we lose about 50 service members, and then we'll be adding over 600 service members over a few years to the Growler. And so what that results in is a top line that remains consistent around 8,500 people. So issues like housing and schools and all those other community things that go along with population, our impact on that is not predicted to change. However, we do have challenges in affordable housing and such that we need to work with the community on to make sure we're working to a resolution that makes sense. This is our housing area. It's a 60-minute commute in the morning, and so obviously it goes all the way down to the southern tip of Whidbey Island, up to Anacortes, and then out to the I-5 corridor. About 8% of our people come in from Hidalgo, basically Skagit County, and about 4 to 5% Anacortes, and the rest of them are out around the I-5 corridor. This is the Northwest Training Range Complex. So, like I said, Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, these are all military training routes for both visual and instrument flight conditions. We have a place here at Boardman, which is a range where we do go out to do training. Oregon Military Department is building some capability to do unmanned aircraft testing and operations, and also machine gun ranges. So we're working with them on that. And we work a lot of renewable energy issues out there. It's agriculture, renewable energy, and national security are kind of the three elements that make up the economy out there. So it's great to be a part of that in the community conversations to go with, trying to work through how we get those three things to work together so that we can have a solution that makes sense for everybody. This also includes the EW training area out there, the electronic warfare training area. Ground crews will go out. We have vans out there on the Forest Service lands to go around and provide them presentations of things. They're basically cell phone emitters that go out there they have to find. And so they fly and do their training out there on the Olympic Peninsula. And then, like I said, a lot of the training for mainly the fleet squadrons takes place in the central Washington area. We are going through a supplemental environmental impact statement. This is how we get our permits. It used to be every 5 years. Now it's every 7 years with this one. This is how we get our permits under the Marine Mammal Protection Act and others to be able to do the training and operations that we need to do out there. So we're going through this process. We finished the public comment period. The draft is out there for review, and we're looking to complete that by October of 2020. So those are the topics that I figured I'd kind of brushed over. I'm happy to answer any questions as long as the Master at Arms will allow me to stand up here and talk with you. Yes, sir.
On your bombing range in 50, did you ever drop live bombs over there?
There was never a live bombing range. It was inert bombs, which might have a smoke charge, and also inert rockets, so rocket fuels. So those are the things other than the actual bomb bodies. And not having been here through that time, I say that that's what the rules were. I trust that we followed the rules, but that's what it was.
How much of your training happens over this area and has it increased recently?
Training over this area is, so in order to, whenever you see aircraft flying over here, it's probably to go on some of these training routes that I showed you. And so, you know, it's always fun to get on one of those training routes because it's low level flying, it's very challenging. But it's not where the bulk of our training goes. Certainly, over the last 40 years, we've gotten away from thinking that we're going to fly in undercover. When you watch Top Gun Maverick and they've got the scenes of flying undercover, we don't do that anymore. We rely on the grounder to protect us going in there. And so there is some, I can't say it's really picking up. With additional grounders, you'll see it's about, about 30% increase in grounders. Maybe you could project a 30% increase in activity, but there's not a lot of activity there. Also, we're not the only ones who use those ranges. We also have other entities. I flew out in the morning, and I would come up and fly the 1355, one of the low-level training routes, a few times.
Can you tell us any stories about when you were flying and the story you had?
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's see. Let me go through my memory bank here. Well, I can remember one in particular that a lot of the missions that we did over Afghanistan and Iraq were not kinetic. They were providing presence, looking for, hold at. So I was working with the Marine Corps and ground forces in Ramadi, and you had helicopters underneath you, you had other Marine Corps platforms, so you're assigned an altitude, and we had a Predator UAV that we passed very close by. It's very challenging environment. There's a lot going on. Nowadays you have 4 radios to monitor, 1 interflight communications because you're always out there with a wingman, and then you have another UHF radio that you're working with that ground controller on, and then you have 2 Link 16, which are data link radios that you monitor as well, to be able to talk command and control to a couple of command and control entities. So it's busy in the headset, it's busy in the stack, it's nighttime, you're on night vision goggles, you're trying to run your IR sensor, and you're trying to focus on what's going on there. That's why the 2-place cockpit's really nice. I'm a big fan of it. Of course, if there wasn't it there, I wouldn't be there. I've got a chauffeur to drive me around and make sure we're not going to run into something while I focus on doing my mission. And so, in one of those particular nights, we'll go to another case where I was down in Afghanistan, and maybe we'll skip that one. That involved doing an overflight for after an IED, trying to get the rescue helo in there. But there are other times, beautiful day. Well, actually, let me go back to the first time I ever dropped ordnance. It was in Iraq. It was in 1999. I just come back to the ship. It was my second deployment. I just come back to the ship after I was in Bahrain. We left Aqaba in Jordan after a 3-day port visit. The ship left. I left from the ship to go to Saudi Arabia and then to Bahrain to coordinate some conferences and training that we were going to do. And then I was able to join the ship flying a cod out there. They had all come all the way around, and the next day was our first day of operations in Iraq. I had been there a couple years before when we were doing Southern Watch, just patrolling, not dropping anything. And since then, we did Desert Fox in 1998, which brought kinetics back into it, and Saddam Hussein and his forces. And so we go off. We were the second event to go in that day, and the rules of engagement were if somebody was shot at, they were not allowed to retaliate. They would basically pull the forces back, and then on another wave, command and control would pick a site that we could then attack as a reactive effort. So we were assigned that mission as we were getting ready to walk to the aircraft. We were assigned AAA batteries around Basra. It was me and my wingman, and we went in. It was nice because we went up all these missions. You take off and you go up, transit 30 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on if you're going to Iraq or Afghanistan. And then you go to the tanker to fill up, and then you go ahead and ingress to your area. And so we filled up, we ingressed, got to our holding point, told to execute the attack. It was an eastbound attack, and so we were in combat spread, flying in at about 25,000 feet from the west. It was nighttime, and they were firing AAA at us, so we were maneuvering the aircraft, and I was focused on acquiring a target through the IR sensor, and then giving the pilot the cues when to settle out the aircraft for the last 10 seconds so we could settle out and release. We settled out, we released, and then we started maneuvering again while I maintained that sensor on the target and maintained the laser fire that actually guides the weapon into impact. And it impacted just within the berm, so it's like a berm around it with the AAA piece in the middle, and it hit just on the inside of the berm to destroy the AAA piece. So that was the first time I ever deployed. It's been many times since then, but I will tell you that still the vast minority of the missions we do, a lot of it is to provide that overwatch. I've done overwatch for Canadians, Brits, Norwegians, and of course all kinds of Americans out there. What else? Yes, sir.
Is there still
program for Marine Corps pilots?
Is there a what?
Are there still Marine Corps pilots?
Yes, sir, there are. So they're not flying the F-18 anymore. They went full into the F-35 B variant, which is the one that has a door open on top to do that vertical and short takeoff and landing. So they've got the F-35B, and they also have helicopters, a lot of it as well. But so yeah, we do have Marine Corps, and almost all my deployments have been with the Marine Corps squadron flying F-18s, but that's no more. Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you all.
Thank you very much. We have a world famous, well, the universe famous man from Sedro Woolley Rotary, and when you make your map next time, put Sedro Woolley into your map because we think we're important over here, and you should too. So, and thank you very much. Very good. And with that, is there anything else? I was going to tell a story about these guys flying under our cables up there logging one day, but I don't think they want to hear that. So, if there's nothing else, we are